Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the virtual session, Sustainable Future Through Gender Equality. The session that has been organized jointly by European Business and Technology Center, WIKIS India EU Business Council, and UN Women. I hope we are all audible and we are all visible here through LinkedIn live session. I'm very glad to represent both of the organizations, EBTC and WIKIS India EU Business Council, and also to focus today's discussion on two important values for me, sustainability and gender equality, which is necessary to achieve it. WIKIS, this idea of the council that I initiated last month, is to join and connect women who are strengthening European Union India Business Corridor. And I am very glad and very thankful to both of our partners that they agree to co-organize this session with us. The initiative joined women who achieved a lot in the corridor, who are supporting the corridor, and also who are working on gender equality and making women heard and visible. Very important for me to speak about it, and also in the context of sustainability. Without taking too much time, I would like to start the session and welcome Paul Jensen, Managing Director of EBTC, and ask Paul to say the opening remarks for today's session. And that's how I would like to start it. Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ada, and it's indeed a privilege to be here and again have a session with UN Women, and now with the addition of Wiki, very, very interesting, and especially also because the focus today is on gender equality, and I'm very happy to see that there's a power-packed agenda today with a lot of women who have achievements and success that they can report about, so we can all learn about it. Yeah? Now, I agree with you. I like the link, Ada, that you're having with gender equality and sustainability, because I think in the work that we have been doing as the European Business and Technology Center, we have more often than not seen how projects, how activities become much more diverse if we ensure that we have also a diverse set of people working on it. So not only in terms of geographies, nationalities, other backgrounds, but also specifically pertaining to the gender equality. Yeah? And if you get that balance right, I think we've seen a lot of stories that then end up showcasing the value of working together in such teams. And EBTC, it's also something we have a focus on. I will be very frank and say we're not where we want to be. So when we discuss this at management level and say this is something that has to be a focus, we want to be somewhere further ahead down the line compared to where we are now. Right now, I think, Ada, we're within the EBTC fraternity, we're about somewhere between 35 and 40% female partners, associates, employees, consultants, and what have you. But obviously that has to be much closer to 50%. And so that's for sure a given within EBTC that's a focus that we want to close in on. And I think it's something that we also, in all our activities and all our events, it's one agenda, if not directly on the agenda. It's one item on the agenda to focus on that. So whether we work promoting startup collaborations or technology collaborations between Europe and India, we sort of highlight this issue as a benefit to all sides. Now, if we look at some of the numbers in India currently, so India, you all know, saw the highest number of startups turning unicorn in 2021. If we look at who actually leads those unicorns, we unfortunately see that only 10% of those unicorns are led by women founders. Yeah, that's according to NASSCOM. India, unfortunately, also ranks 70th among 77 countries covered in the Female Entrepreneurship Index. And women constitute around 14% of the total entrepreneurship in India, according to the Ministry of Statistics. So, there's a lot of work that needs to be done and can be done. And I also see it as EBDC's mission to be part of making that change. The only way, the best way to do that is, in fact, to be at the forefront and walk the talk ourselves. So exactly to have more female colleagues as part of activities and part of projects and showcase that, and also be part of such events here where we can really highlight it. So it's also important for me that I'm part of this. So I'm also attuned to what can be done, what can we also do differently at EBDC, what can we do differently in projects and activities that we're engaging in. And I'm personally very keen, Ada, to see what comes out of the discussions today in the link between gender equality and sustainability, because I think that can be a fulcrum that we can for sure focus on. So I don't want to talk anymore. I want to listen to you all. Very, very interesting. And I'm happy to see that Susan is also here and speaking after me. Good to see you again, Susan. We haven't met in person yet in this wonderful COVID world, but we will soon. We're both based in Delhi. So I think back to you, Ada, and then I'll listen to you all. Thank you for putting this together and gathering this amount of firepower in the agenda.
Indeed, thank you so much. So I would like to welcome Susan Ferguson, UN Women representative for the office in India. And thank you for supporting us, and thank you for collaborating with us to organize this session today. Susan.
Thank you so much and for that, Ada, and also Paul. And I think that you were one of the first people I actually met when I first started my job. So we must meet in person soon. So good afternoon, everyone, and all the eminent panelists and everyone who's here today. It's always such a pleasure to be here with you. And I'd really like to welcome everyone to this workshop, which is this collaboration between Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the European Business and Technology Centre and ourselves. And we're really delighted to partner with you because we share this common agenda of really promoting women's economic empowerment and equality in the corporate sector and in the Europe-India business corridor. So it's really a pleasure to be here, and I hope that, that everyone is as pleased as I am to be here today. So the past few decades, we've witnessed many advances in the social, economic and political empowerment of women and girls around the world, as we know. But despite these achievements, there are many gaps that remain. And actually, some of these have widened, and do widen in crises such as war and natural disasters and, of course, the pandemic. So in India, for example, female labour force participation has been declining over the years, and it dropped to its lowest during the COVID-19 pandemic. According to ILO estimates in 2020, the female labour force participation rate was around 18%, which is one of the lowest in the world. Over 90% of Indian women work in the informal sector in lower paid and low growth jobs, including domestic work, for example. According to the World Economic Forum 2021, the Global Gender Gap Report, Indian women earned around 1/5 that of men, which puts India sadly among the bottom 10 countries with a sizable gender pay gap. The share of women in senior and managerial positions also remains low, with only 70.1% of board seats in India held by women in 2022. And only 3.6% of board chairs are women. So this combined with the fact that large businesses spend less than 1% of their funds to source from women-owned businesses in India. So women in the supply chain also remains a challenge. So in India and also everywhere around the world, women are burdened with an inordinate amount of unpaid work. For example, in the Asia Pacific region, women on average spend 4.1 hours per day on unpaid work, including domestic chores, while men spend only about 1.7 hours. And of course, there's only so many hours in the day. And if you spend more doing one thing, you have to spend less doing another thing. So it's important to look at this area of care work, and shared responsibility of that will also open up more opportunities for women in the private sector and in jobs generally. But, and despite some of these glaring gaps, women do not shy away from taking on leadership roles. In fact, I was watching a fascinating thing about women in STEM, and one of the eminent scientists in India basically said she's never met a woman who says no to a leadership opportunity. So if given the chance, women will take up those roles. Women's contribution to economies, whether as entrepreneurs or employees in the informal or the formal sector, or as unpaid carers, is enormous, but often unacknowledged. It's often invisible. So as we pick up the pieces following the COVID pandemic, which we hope is waning, women need greater support to become or remain financially independent, because they have faced these additional burdens during COVID. So women need greater access to funds to recover their businesses or livelihoods. So it needs specific investment. Just expecting that that these barriers will disappear for women probably isn't realistic. We know that actually post-pandemic, men have been able to return to jobs more often than women, which indicates a structural barrier there that we need to understand and unlock. And unlocking women's ability to participate equally in the workforce will also unlock, according to the McKinsey Institute, about $27 billion of added funding into the economy of India. So there's a huge business case for women to be able to participate equally in the workforce and in the economy. So there is an urgent need actually to invest in women. And one way of doing this is for corporates to open up their supply chains more to women-led businesses. But also women's businesses will need to be prepared to provide services at scale. And this needs our help to build the capacity, the practical capacity of women to be able to participate equally in supply chains. Also improving working conditions for women and creating better, equal, and importantly, safer opportunities at work will help bring women back to the workforce and benefit businesses overall. And here it's great to see Mamta also about to speak, because I know this is something that H&M are really looking at investing in the future as well. And that's good news. It's not just H&M. There are many investors who are wanting to really look at these barriers that women face and to trial new and innovative ways of dealing with them. So UN Women, together with the International Capital Market Association and the International Finance Corporation, recently launched a new practical guide to using sustainable bond issuances to advance gender equality. Again, this is what I mean about we have to invest in women's businesses. And bonds are one way of doing this. So we're also working very closely with the State Bank of India to launch livelihood bonds to facilitate women's access to finance. And in India, we've partnered with the Confederation of Indian Industry and We Connect International for a pilot program, training select corporates on gender responsive procurement to enable greater women's participation in value chains. So, undoubtedly, the private sector is an incredibly important stakeholder in development and in women's equality. And it's the engine for employment and growth, which is why we are so pleased to be able to be on this platform with you. We work closely with companies to set up and take forward standards like the Women's Empowerment Principles, or the WEPs. And I know that a number of different firms that are in this circle are already signatories. Actually, around the world, 6,400 companies have signed on to the WEPs, and in India, 325 companies. And this shows the interest here in and the commitment to really engendering the workplace to open up the opportunities for women. So, in conclusion, the business case for opening up jobs for women at all levels of business, having more women on boards and more women in leadership positions, and ensuring women's businesses can compete in supply chains is really clear. There is a clear business case for that. And together we need to continue to put in the hard yards to make the changes happen. And we look forward to working closely with all of you in future, again, to continue our work in this regard. So thank you so much for coming today and for having me also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for the important message, and also highlighting how important it is to have women in business, and having more women and supporting, and also all the job that you do at UN Women when it comes to supporting these ideas is very important. And as you've mentioned now, I would like to welcome our special guest, Mamta Malhotra, who is Supply Chain Sustainability Manager at H&M, to deliver the keynote address. Hi, Mamta. Thank you for being here today. It's over to you.
Hi, everyone. Of course, very, very honored, very happy to be here and listen to all the discussions. Really looking forward to having more collaboration further. And without much ado, so I would like to share my screen. Is it possible, Ada, that I can do that?
Let me check and get back to you in a second. I'm sure it's possible.
All right. Currently, it shows disabled.
You can share now. We have changed the settings.
All right. All right, then I'm sharing, and since I cannot see anyone, you'll have to tell me if you can see the screen.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. So again, thank you so much for having H&M over, and I am personally quite happy to be a part of this this discussion. Very invested myself, being a part of the sustainability team at H&M into what we are doing on gender. Of course, a lot of discussions are happening currently, and a lot of focus into what we can do on bringing about a more focused approach towards gender equality. But before I get into that, I can quickly share a little bit about H&M. So H&M started in 1947. The founder was Erling Persson, who opened the first store named Hennes in Västerås in Sweden. And Hennes was named after because he was selling only women's clothes at that time. And from 1947 to currently, it's of course been a very long journey into 76 markets, approximately 4,700 stores. E-commerce, of course, has also been picking up. We are in 56 markets now with a net sales of 199 billion Swedish kronor in 2021. So today the company is headed by Helena Helmsson. She is the CEO of the H&M Group, which is located in Stockholm in Sweden. And the H&M Group basically comprises of a family of independent brands which have either been founded or acquired by the group. So H&M Cos, Weekday, Monkey, H&M Home, Other Stories, Arcade, and Found are different brands. Each of the brands have their own unique identity and they complement each other well. Together, we offer, of course, a great variety of style and trends within fashion and accessories. There's beauty, sportswear, as well as interiors. This is a little bit landscape about where the production supply chain is. So we have 36 production markets, 700 suppliers globally, which are then
Sorry to disturb you, but the slides are not changing. We're still stuck on the first slide.
Okay, I am moving the slide.
Push the play button or put in presenter mode.
It was in presenter mode. Okay, should I reshare again? Maybe that would
maybe
work.
try that. Okay, we see your screen now, then presenter mode maybe.
It doesn't move for me either now. Zoom is not a very familiar platform for us. What do I need to do?
We're seeing your screen, so all you need to do is put PowerPoint in presenter mode or play mode.
Well, that's what it is. But
strange.
it doesn't move for me also.
Yeah, it seems the screen is frozen right now.
Maybe if you can just send the presentation to us and we can present it. Maybe you can send it to Ada if that works. Ada,
I can do that. Does it move now, the screen?
No, unfortunately not. It seems
Mamta, I believe you have multiple screens and it's showing on one of your screens, but this is not the screen we are seeing.
Okay.
Okay, now it moved. So we can see the fourth slide about your brand.
Okay, then maybe there is just a delay because you can see the slide with our brands.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. It's still not a presenter mode, Mamta, and as much as we see, so there is a disconnect.
Maybe there is just a delay. I can wait for 2-3 seconds. Otherwise, I send it to you, Ada.
Sure. Okay.
So I've moved on to the fifth slide. Just let me know if you can see this, which has the world map with production supply chain.
No, not yet. Not yet. Unfortunately, it's not showing it.
I'm terribly sorry. Then maybe, Ada, what I will do is I will stop sharing and I will just send the slides to you once.
Of course, sure. And then we'll share.
I have sent it to you, Ada.
Okay, let me check and then we can start and I will share the screen. Unfortunately, it still did not reach me, but maybe Mamta, if you can just continue, and in the meantime, I will try to catch you up with the slides where are you speaking, if it's fine for you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we don't want to spend a lot of time. So I was talking a little bit about our production markets. And so we work across from production, 36 production markets, 700 suppliers, and 1,600 production units. This means we work with approximately 1.5 million workers all across, out of which 63% are women. Uh, from an H&M perspective, there are 20 production offices. For example, India is one production office, Bangladesh is one production office. And within the production offices, there are 3,000 production colleagues who work across different functions, from logistics to sustainability to quality to the business assortment dimension. And talking a little bit about our sustainability strategy, then H&M Group's vision for sustainability is to lead the change towards circular and climate positive fashion while being a fair and equal company. We work according to our ambitious sustainability strategy produced jointly with external and internal experts. And our sustainability work spans the entire value chain, focusing both on our own operations and together with other stakeholders, the industry in general. So talking a little bit more about our sustainability work, we focus on leading the change. So there are 3 dimensions to this: leading the change, circular and climate positive, and fair and equal. Leading the change means that we try to influence our support positive transformation in the fashion industry, driving innovation, collaborating with others, pushing for greater transparency, and rewarding sustainable actions. Climate, circular and climate positive, that remains one of the greatest challenges of our time. Its consequences we know are going to affect and are affecting the entire planet and everyone living on it, making it a key challenge to all industries, including fashion. For us, this also means new possibilities and raising our sustainability ambitions even more. Fair and equal, we want to be a part of the fashion industry that provides fair jobs and equal treatment for everyone. We respect human rights, promote inclusion, and champion diversity throughout our supply chain, and call on the others to do the same. Have you received it, Ada? I can continue to speak.
Please continue. So
Okay.
I guess we cannot show it right now.
Why gender equality matters to us. Of course, the women right movements have a long history and have been going on for decades. And we might wonder, aren't we done yet? No, the work for gender equality still matters and needs to be continued. And we have cited a few reasons as to why it still matters. So firstly, it's about fundamental human rights, that all humans are born free and equal. And this is not only the case in many parts of the world, unfortunately. Gender equality is not only a goal in itself in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, it is a prerequisite for achieving all the Sustainable Development Goals. There is a positive progress on gender equality in the parts of the world, but there is also a negative development in some countries where women's rights are severely questioned, challenged, and restricted. And as on today, no country in the world has achieved fully the gender equality. There is an increasing interest and demand from stakeholders. Businesses are expected to address gender equality and continue to positive change. And with the pandemic, which in many ways has disproportionately affected women through loss of jobs and heightened risk of gender-based violence, there is also an alarming reason to do so. Also, the next generation will see gender equality as a hygiene factor, something that should be a norm. And we are a business where majority of women in our organization, our industry employs a majority of women, therefore we have a stake in it, a responsibility and an opportunity to make gender equality possible. And how do we do that? We need to basically incorporate our entire value chain in addressing gender equality, right from our internal policies to customers, to communities, and then to workers in the supply chain. So we are signatories of the Women Empowerment Principles since 2017. These principles offer guidance to business to promote gender equality and women's empowerments in the workplace. and the marketplace and in the community. Internally, we lean on our policies on equality and non-discrimination, for example, to ensure fair and equal treatment of all our colleagues. This is not only about gender, it is ensuring fair and equal treatment of all, no matter our sex, gender, identity, nationality, ethnicity, or background. We have an ambition to improve diversity internally and continuously aim for diversity in terms of nationality, age, gender, and other perspectives across the organization. As on today, the gender share is 74% female, and in the management positions there are 71% female. So we are quite happy to see that at a management level of also this ratio is equally proportioned. When it comes to our brands of course promote diversity and gender equality through customer facing initiatives, campaigns, and marketing. And in 2021, we have entered into a partnership called Unstereotype Alliance to further work to eradicate harmful gender-based and other stereotypes in marketing and communication. When it comes to communities, we seek to advance opportunities for people through our business. For example, we engage both globally and locally through community initiatives and partnerships to support targeted groups. Two examples are from Buy from a Black Woman initiative in the US and our engagement in mentoring refugee women to support them in the jobs together with the Tent Partnership for Refugees. And we are proud of the fact that our industry contributes to the needed and important job opportunities, a majority of workers being women. But in many of the production markets, India included, there are great challenges. For example, in terms of legislation and culture that are barriers for gender equality. Therefore, we have a very specific women's empowerment strategy for our production supply chain, which covers health and safety, representation, career and development, and pay equity. Am I going too fast or too slow, or is it fine?
It's very good, but we will need to a little bit.
I'm not sure if you're still able to see the slides because I am speaking from my presentation.
Yes, slides are not possible, but we soon need to start the first session of today. So just I would like to ask you for the final remarks and also the importance of H&M and sustainability and in what H&M does for gender equality. That would be great.
Absolutely. So as I was talking, when it talks about our supply chain, we focus on 4 specific areas, even when it comes to gender, which is health and safety, representation. So health and safety means that women are empowered, they are healthy and safe in their everyday working conditions, and then there are programs which are allocated towards that. When it comes to representation, it means that they have an equal participation, voice, leadership in social dialogue, including all worker representation forums. On career and development, we basically measure how many women are working in the supply chain and how many of those women are actually in leadership positions. And there is a specific KPI towards that. When it comes to pay equity, then it means that women should get equal remuneration for work of equal value. And of course, there is work happening on that. We are still not there, but then there are programs that we work on. And when it comes to setting our agenda and our way of working, then of course there are some minimum requirements which are basically compliance and the law of the land. There are H&M group commitments, which are commitments. For example, there is a commitment to not have any recruitment fee for migrant worker by 2025. And currently each country is then preparing their own roadmap. There is a sustainability index, which is basically measuring the factory level score, which drives reward mechanism to lead the industry to change. So each factory then comes up with how they are performing on a sustainability index, which is also linked to how the business is being placed. One example could be having a better childcare facility gives them basically a better score. And then there are specific KPIs which are selected by each assortment. For example, ladies could have a very specific goal on equality, and these are then set out for direction and priority. One example again here could be that the ratio of women supervisors versus the ratio of women in production workers. So that's a little bit about how we work and how we measure these different tools. And what's next, what's coming up next for us is that we want to improve, of course, these KPIs for measuring the data quality. We want to increase the knowledge of our internal team. We also want to build up a bank of material and best practices to enable supplier ownership. It's more about the supply chain and how do the brands and assortments promote these topics to each supplier.
Thank you, Mamta. I'm afraid we need to move on and start the next session because there are two sessions planned for today and with great speakers. So we don't want to make a delay, a necessary delay. If it's fine for you to make an last.
Absolutely, I'm done and I'll be happy to take up any questions after the session.
Thank you so much. And I hope you can stay with us and listen to the next session, which will be, thank you so much again, which will be moderated by Amrita Gandikota. And she's the German Chancellor's Fellow for 2021-2022. She's also a member of Wiki. And she will moderate the session, Europe and India Women Interpreters at the Forefront of Innovation. I'm very happy that 3 of the speakers are members of Wiki's India EU Business Council. And I'm also very happy that we have Ravi Reddy here to speak about his experience. And I would like to ask Amrita to introduce the speakers and also start the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ada, for a very kind introduction. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Juliana, also for referring me to be here. Of course, it's a great pride to be talking about such a pertinent topic at this point. And I've also had some brief experience working towards women entrepreneurship and leadership through various initiatives such as the German Indian Startup Exchange Program or Asia Berlin. So I feel that it would be a really good discussion coming up, also speaking with the next speakers. We have today with us Suki Dosanjh Lenz. She's the co-founder of Fashion Revolution India. She's also the Global Senior Communications Manager at Kickstart Innovation. Thank you, Suki, for being here. And we have Juliana Fromter, who is the program lead at EU India InnoCenter. And then we have Cecilia Oldner. She's the Senior Vice President at Sweden India Business Council. She's also the head of Sweden India Tech Community. And finally, we have Ravi Reddy, who is the director of Mirai Next. And especially thank you for Ravi for being here, because I think this makes the panel a more inclusive and a more diverse panel in itself. Furthering the cause of the whole discussion. I think this will make a very inclusive discussion, having various perspectives. So many thanks for you all for being here today. So we have about 30 minutes for the discussion, and the main objective that we have for us here today is to first understand your roles in supporting women entrepreneurship or women leadership, and how you try to understand and how we can strive for a sustainable future by promoting gender equality and by creating opportunities for women leading technology and innovation. I have one request since we have a packed schedule, is that firstly, the speakers, it would be wonderful if all of us have our videos on, and it would be great if you all are brief and sharp with your remarks as far as possible. And so let me invite you to begin with for an opening statement as well, since we have been talking about this topic and we have now progressed, the context has been set. But first of all, how does it matter initially to mind the gap, especially when it comes to diversity of gender? I mean, how impactful is it to have diverse teams across all sectors? First of all, how much is it necessary, and how is it impactful? So perhaps we could begin with Ravi and then take a quick remark from all of us. or anybody? I see Juliana. Oh, yeah, you're here.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Amrita. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, EBTC, for this opportunity. And thank you, Ada, for reaching out to me. It's absolutely a privilege to be here. I think it's absolutely critical to have women in leadership roles. Women constitute about 50% of the population. So I think emergence of women as leaders in top level positions is absolutely critical. I think if you're missing out on women in top level positions, you're pretty much missing out on untapped talent, which leads to reduced innovation, which leads to reduced growth. That could lead to reduced revenues, and then obviously, ultimately reduced competitiveness. And I also think that women bring a very completely different perspective than women. So I think even the culture of empathy and vibrancy in an organization can be tremendously enhanced having women in leadership roles. I also think that women tend to be more involved in overall in diversity, equity, and inclusiveness outside of their formal work in their organization. So which also helps in the cohesiveness, building cohesiveness in the organization. I think, so overall, I think it's extremely critical but in India, what we have seen is women are not onboarded. It's not a prerequisite to have women on boards until the companies go IPO. So I think so the number of women trained in corporate governance is quite low. So it would help if governments push that and prevail upon that to make it mandatory for women to, actually get trained in this, and also to be on boards from Series B onwards, as soon as when private equity enters organization. So I think overall, we feel as an organization, it's extremely critical to have women in leadership positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi, for that, and also sharing a quick challenge and how we can maneuver over that. And let me move on to perhaps Juliana. Would you like to share as well on this perspective?
Yeah, I would like to speak to two elements, and maybe I should send beforehand that I particularly look at EU founders that have an interest to enter the Indian market.
Sure, yeah.
And I would say any founder, no matter women, men, they're already a quite elite and fortunate group of people, and they are able to take a certain risk in life that most people cannot. Yeah, like it's sometimes even self-prohibitive. So for me, it's a gradual evolution. The way I look at it, the startups that we work with are typically in later stages. That means these startups also have been founded maybe 3, 5 or more years ago, so that they may not have all the benefits of whatever the work has been going on along that timeline as well. So we do see a lot of male-led startups that work with us. I would still say we would love to see more women, but I'm also happy to see more employees in these organizations that also participate in our programs, because from data that we know is the most likely to found future startups are employees of startups, because they learn entrepreneurship through participating in these organizations. So for me, exposure and people like us here in the room, everyone really, is kind of guiding by example. And I think these are the more tangible, impressive statements that we can all make individually for women to see that it's possible.
Great. Thanks for that comment, especially on driving onto the point of having exposure and awareness and being part of the conversation even as employees. Suki, would you also comment on this? I'm sorry, I'm hearing a resound.
Sure, happily. You can hear me okay, Amrita?
Yes, perfectly now.
Okay, super. So I just think it's really important for everybody to understand, and I think a lot of us work with startups and are on the pulse of innovation. And what I've seen increasingly in the startup networks is often HR as a department, or to have a figurehead within a startup organization, is often a side note at the early stage, and even when they're at the point of scaling up. And I have seen some rather negative impacts of this, where when Corona hit, there was a number of startups, and there was one in particular, and unfortunately, I'm not here to name and shame, but what I will say is the first that were terminated were people of color and women. And they were already underrepresented in those organizations. And this is in Switzerland, which is number one for innovation. So what I really want to just flag is that diversity is important world over, and even countries that, are really well praised in terms of getting things right. There are things fundamentally wrong when it comes to gender equality in the workplace. And what I try and advocate through the startup networks that we work with is just give pillars of examples of how they can really diversify organizations and understand the power of it. There's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of education to be done. A lot of education, even when you've got startup experts doing that are leaders in their field, they are fundamentally getting people and people in the workplace not always right. So I would say lean in pillars are really important, and we try and advocate that and create that with in the advisory network that we work at, whether it's Kickstart, and then there's Fashion Revolution, but that's a whole other topic, and I'm sure we'll hit that a bit later on.
Thank you, Suki, for quite a realistic take, and it is surprising to hear from the other side of the pond as well. But now I'd like to also want to listen in from Cecilia as to what her points are, and especially from her perspective coming from Sweden, and what her take is on this aspect.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm actually sitting in Sweden today, though I live in India normally. But Sweden, of course, as many know, have for a very long time been a strong promoter of gender equality. It's in our, so to speak, DNA, but I think we need to move away from this whole question to why one should focus more on having more diverse organization. We now know it's proven that a diverse organization, including having a representation of more women in it, will make the organization more successful. We need to focus more on the how we go about it. I'm looking forward to this discussion now that we're going to have today, breaking some of the barriers.
Perfect, exactly. I mean, I think going forward, that is the aim. This is to just reiterate the aspect, and as Ms. Mamta also mentioned before, it should be crucial to make this as a hygiene factor. And Cecilia, I would like to continue with you, since you also have a short time constraint. So especially coming from Sweden, and you having spent close to 15 years on a different continent, what is it that you have been doing? And I'm also curious to understand a little bit about Girls Club Capital, and then I have a follow-up question. But firstly, I would like to hear from these 2 points from your perspective.
Yes, I'd love to tell you more about that. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm from Sweden. I'm sitting in Sweden today, but I live in India, and I moved to India in 2007 to be a part of sparking the Indian wine revolution. And one thing that I felt was important was to be a part of a developing industry. And for me, it was kind of a goal to go into an industry that was male dominated and become an inspiration and a thought leader in that space. So when I first came to India, the alcohol bev industry was very much male dominated, but coming down and then building a wine company and building a team with also a lot of women and encouraging them to join the industry was something that was a target and something that I achieved. And then moving on from the wine industry, but still, of course, being involved in the wine industry, but so to speak, moving on from that in the topic, is that today I work on bridging Sweden and India with Sweden-India Business Council, the Sweden-India Tech Community, and having more female representation in that space. In particular, in the Sweden-India Tech Community, we have a 50% representation of women. And of course, in tech, it's also an underrepresented, so to speak, industry. So I try to encourage more women to be a part of it, to educate them. Also, of course, Suki mentioned that early education is so important. So that is something that I'm spending a lot of time doing. And as you also touched on the subject of Girls Club Capital, which is a New York-based organization, what we do is that we coach and we connect female entrepreneurs with investors and advisors globally. But mostly what I put effort into is coaching them and making them ready to take on the world, because I believe we need to be there to inspire, and we need to be there to educate, and we need to be there to coach and build them up, women who might not get that support otherwise. And also when it comes to the investment point, only 2% of the VC capital goes to female-led companies, and therefore I'm also putting a lot of effort into making a change in that space.
Definitely, thank you for that. It is indeed quite inspiring. And I have one follow-up question here. Is since you worked also from the Business Council, both from the Sweden side and the India side, do you think there are any one or two lessons that we could learn from from both these ecosystems, especially in the context of female leadership or innovation? Any couple of insights from your side before you leave? Thank you.
Well, I mean, I do so many things on a regular basis and a daily basis, connecting Sweden and India. And of course, we have so much to learn from each other. When it comes to Sweden, yes, we are very much on the forefront of gender equality. We have, for example, 12 out of the country's 23 ministers are female, and our prime minister, Magdalena Andersson, she's a woman. I see there a lot we can learn. I say we, being Indian by heart nowadays, from Sweden in terms of that. And then when it comes to Sweden, there is so much we can learn from India. So what I do to actually connect the two, and I encourage other countries to do so as well, as we have so many amazing countries taking part here today, and speakers and women and men, is to take your country that you represent, people, organizations, startups, but also grown-ups, so to speak, to go from your country to India to engage with the ecosystems in India and vice versa, because it's when we meet that we could really make a difference. So these delegations that we do on a regular basis has been very, very fruitful to connect the two countries. What I believe also is very important is to really engage with the whole, so to speak, ecosystem and network. So when it comes to the Sweden Tech Community that I started, it's an organization where we have about 150 different individuals representing everything from startups, grown-ups, governmental offices, investors, academia, incubators, media, influencers. And it's really when you get together that kind of a engine of people that you can really make a difference. So don't just work in silos. Sweden has, of course, a history of being very inclusive and very innovative in that space. So I think if we could be a little bit more inclusive in everything that you do, from low to high, that is something that would really encourage and make a difference. So I would encourage that others should be doing that too, and not to work in your own space and just keep it at that, but to work on a much broader level and a more inclusive level, because then you can really make a change.
Thank you. Thanks for driving home the point of being as collaborative as possible. I think that's quite useful, especially when we're talking about diversity and inclusion. So now, Juliana, you also spent a lot of time in India, in Hyderabad, but now you support, as you said, EU startups to access the Indian market. So I would like to know, I would like to know how viable is India from the perspective of a women-founded EU startup. If you have any comments on this, yeah, just please share.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily challenge the viability of India, like from what we see, is, and I'm going back to the point that I made earlier, is that the women that we do see, they're quite privileged, right? They're extremely well educated. Many of the startups that we have in our programs may have received public funding before. So they are already on a growth trajectory as a business. And I don't see per se like tremendous like negative prohibitions that come from the Indian market. There are obviously certain cultural setups that you need to learn to navigate. I'm not diminishing that fact. But I think like I see the work to increase the number of female founders more on the European side than looking at what India may need to do in terms of like to attract more, or yeah. Right now the situation is we have about 30% of female founders, and that is mostly co-founders, right? That means they're also working with male co-founders in their teams, and I think that's a great setup to strive for. Secondly, and I come back to risk as I elaborated earlier, right? One of the major things is that just women don't feel as comfortable with risk as men. That's just a fact for most women. Yeah, like I don't mean to say that there aren't women that can manage risk out of personal choice, but if you look at the larger scheme of things, there's definitely something to it. Yeah, that we need to keep in mind, and also see how far can you push women into it, even though they may or may not want to be in it, right? Or feeling comfortable. Much of the research has also shown that as a founder, you need a bit of overconfidence, and most of the time, not just a bit. Yeah. And that's just not inherently true for most women. We are not that overconfident, right? And that's not something that you can switch on or off and like, go about policy and now tell women, now you can be confident. Like, that's just not how it works, right? So I think, and that's why I make this point in being an example, because I think that's inherently the only way to change things, to lead by example. It's possible. One step at a time. You don't need to know already. You don't have to figure it all out already when you start, but give confidence in the journey, right? And I think that's a great way of approaching the topic. And that's what I try to do with all the women that come in our programs. And it doesn't really matter if they we equally support the diversity to the team and the learning at various levels within these organizations. Yeah.
Got it. Yes, I definitely agree on these points, and maybe we can get quick comments with the other speakers also at a later as we go. But thanks, Juliana, for that. Now I will go to Ravi. You, again, continuing perhaps the Hyderabad Connect. You also work with startups, both through your innovation center at Miranex and also through your many educational institutions. So how do you work with your female-led startups, or what is the value that you are creating through the education, from the education perspective as well? And I would like to hear something on these aspects.
Thank you, Amrita. I think first I would like to introduce our educational institution, GNITS in Hyderabad, which is a private institution for women. It's one of the premier women's only institution in India, which is soon going to be a university for women. And I would like to say that we are directly working towards SDG goal number 5. And I would not be boasting if I said we have a certain role that we played in increasing the employability and women in STEM in the labor force in this region. I would say at least 50,000 of our alumni are currently employed with top level organizations in tech, finance, in other cutting edge industries, at mid-level positions, and are going to be leaders, going forward. So I think this is a huge alumni network that is also helping our female students that are passing out and coming into the labor force, because India in SDGs has almost crossed primary education. Now it's about crossing high level education and then being able to bring more women into workforce. So I think currently it's 24%, but it has to absolutely go higher. And we also promote R&D by providing finance through our institution. And we have been patenting a lot of technology that has been created by women. We have 100% placement of all our female students that are coming out of our institutions in the industry. So I think we have excellent mentors, advisory groups. And out of this institution is born Mirai Next, which is the accelerator. And we have a program clearly specifically where we are incubating, accelerating, and supporting women-led startups. We are connected with VHub, which is the women's accelerator promoted by the government here, and multiple other local accelerators promoted by the government. We are connected with Startup India. We are helping them raise capital or funds. We are also connected with CII, IWN, the Women's Network. Then we also give free co-working space for any of the female founders that want to set up their teams at our accelerator. Then we also launched a program for 25 women in deep tech and AI. That's a program that's born out of our accelerator. We're doing programs with organizations like institutions like UPenn, where we are developing innovation and entrepreneurship, and then we are giving them certificates to women that go through that course. So I think we've been extensively doing, and we would love to partner with ecosystems in Europe to learn more that can help us, that can give I think new ideas how we should go about it. So sure. I think our invitation is open.
Thank you. Thank you for closing on such an optimistic note. I think that would be, I think right within the panel, I already see quite few partnerships striking up with amongst us. So thanks on that. And I think now I'll quickly move to Suki, because she also has various perspectives. She definitely works with startups from the Kickstart, from Kickstart, but I also want to understand a little bit from her role with Fashion Revolution, because we previously just touched upon the aspect of Mind the Gap, and with Fashion Revolution, I would also like to understand a little bit about the role of gender there and how pay gap works on that front. So Suki, if you could, I know this is bit more content packed, but if you could quickly give us a snapshot from your experience with Fashion Revolution and Kickstart and how gender plays a role, that would be wonderful.
Sure, I can definitely see some conversations. Ravi, you sparked a lot of ideas and collaboration potential, which is what I love. That's what dialogue is all about, bringing collaboration to the forefront of what we're doing, and I think that's something that's going to really be a winning tool. At Kickstart, we are collaborative. We collaborate with multiple outreach partners all over the world. If we want to truly make an impact, we have to also reach those female founders and let them know about the work we're doing. So getting word to them is an effort in itself, and getting that right is really important. So that's why we work really closely in building partnerships with outreach partners all over the world. I wish we had more female founders from India, not just because I'm Indian, but because we just don't get enough of them over here. So definitely underrepresented, but also our partners have very clear, innovative goals. So we work very closely with them, but we are committed every year, not just looking for more innovation with purpose, but also looking for more female founders. And year by year, we're increasing that. But there's still a lot of work to be done. But another thing that recently came up as a topic of improvement, we work with a number of advisors, not just in Fashion Revolution, but also in Kickstart and a few other organizations that I have my involvement in. And at the founding stage, when startups or organizations are founding, we really need to think more inclusively about representation at that level, because we don't have enough female founders, and a lot of tech startups are male founded and dominated. So I think we can, as advisors and experts, keep advocating that change. But coming back to Fashion Revolution, today is the aftermath. So today is the 25th of April. Yesterday, 24th of April, marked the anniversary of the Rana Plaza disaster, which saw in 2013 over 1,000 people die because a factory collapsed. Those garment workers were working for some of the biggest high street brands. So it's really good to hear from Mamta today, because H&M was one of the organizations that signed the accord. As much as these big organizations want to see a more gender equal workforce and representation, they also have the power to do a lot more. So our theme for Fashion Revolution Week, which is held every year to honor those that died during the Rana Plaza disaster, which was, by the way, the 4th largest industrial disaster in the world. It could have been prevented. And I think that's really important to understand. Most of the workers in that building were women. There were 5,000. Most that died were women. So let's not forget that supervision in the garment industry is predominantly male. And there's a lot of women that are not heard. That's why Fashion Revolution was born. There's over 40 to 60 million garment workers in the field. And that doesn't include the ones on the shop floors. And the fashion industry, and I hope I'm not misquoting, is about $2.5 trillion per year. And there's this acceptance that the living wage is okay. And I think that's really, really important for everybody in business to think about. Profit is important, but in this day and age where the UN SDGs should be at the forefront of our work, we need to have money and power and profit aligning a bit better. This year's theme for Fashion Revolution Week was money, fashion, power. So we were talking about that tug of war between all three, and talking about manufacturing power, retail power, workforce power, and consumer power. So we have to ask for change. And there's a lot to do. As an organization, we're a drop in the ocean. We're not calling for anything new. People before us were asking for change when the industrial revolutions were happening. And we just continue to flag issues that need attention. And for gender equality to really matter, we need big organizations to step up. Just like they prioritize their profits, we need them to step up for people and planet too. It's fair enough advocating change, positive change for one SDG. What about the others? What are you doing for carbon emissions and X, Y, Z? It goes on. So a lot of work to do, Amrita. I could carry on, but in the interest of time, I hope I've covered a point.
Yes, but thank you. I think you very smartly gave us a very visual picture of what the situation is, and thank you for that. And unfortunately, for the sake of time, I think we need to wrap here. But I really thank all the speakers for giving inputs from their own perspectives and having such an open discussion on this. Thank you, Ada, for organizing this, and all the other organizers as well. So I take leave at this point and give the floor back to Ada. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a great session. Thank you for moderating it, and also for all the speakers who shared such a great experience that they have with all of us. Yeah, indeed, we need to move forward as we have a second session coming up, which will be moderated by Arnaldo Abruzini, who is a member of the advisory board of the European Business and Technology Center. And we're gonna speak now about best practices for gender equality in Europe-India Business Corridor. Arnaldo, over to you. Thank you so much for moderating this session and being here.
Thank you very much, Ada. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be part of this session. Well, with no further ado, I'd like immediately to introduce the session. And as you have rightly mentioned, the session is about how do we put in practice what we have heard about policy direction or policy suggestions that are coming from the different parts of the world, specifically in the EU-India business corridor. We had the pleasure to have in our session three speakers that would present some data and some practices that are already embedded in their daily work and in the relationship of their relative countries with India. So I would start immediately with Jukka Lomäki. She's the Counselor for Trade and Investment at the Embassy of Finland in New Delhi. Jukka, can you take the floor, please?
Sure. Thank you very much, Arnaldo, and thank you also for Ada for like trusting me to talk a couple of words. And like I promised, I'll probably have a little bit different approach to these issues. Also, like I'm talking more of like somehow wider perspective. I should say that like I'm not any sort of gender professional. I'm water engineer by education. Like now my job is to help the Finnish companies here in India. What I do observe is that like here we have like really many meetings in which like well, the participation is very like one-sided, like mostly men, many times only men. And I'm dealing with for example our Chamber of Commerce, the companies which are led by the Indian men basically, and like it is one-sided. Like I compare this to like what I have seen in like other countries, for example the neighboring Nepal. And that like what I feel is that like we have like on the government side we have the quotas, but of course like in addition we need the quality of the like female participation. And I purposefully use the words like male and female here, like and that takes me like to the perspective what I mentioned, and that like it is back to like from like my country Finland. I think that the change really starts from far beyond the like the formal employment. I think that the education is really like an important aspect, like having the encouragement of having like the like female to study on different sort of like approaches. The tech field was mentioned, so certainly like having some encouragement for like both men and female go into the fields where they don't normally go. In the education, it really goes to like quite practical issues. If you take many of the rural places in India, so it is like menstrual hygiene management related aspects which do need to be considered like at the early stage, which can like help on the long term. Jumping to the like more policy issues, also like one issue what I would just like to put it to the table is like the maternity and paternity leaves, both of them. They can be that sort of like encouragement which is needed like in terms of the employment. And like otherwise I would like to just finish by saying that many times on these kind of sessions we have like quite well aware people, and like whatever practical examples also we can put to the table, I think that those can do the change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jukka. Very interesting to listen how the country you're coming from Finland, is practicing those element of gender equality that we have discussed before. Now, let's go to Payal Kambar. She's the Director General of the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Payal, what are the elements that you can bring to the table?
Hi Arnaldo, and hi everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. So yes, as you rightly pointed out, I represent the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and I've been working here now for the past 11 years. I think that today's session has been extremely enriching, and I think the importance of gender diversity at the workplace and in society has been re-emphasized a lot. And what I would like to talk about is maybe my perspective from the Chamber in terms of what we've been able to see as an organization and also within our membership. So I think, very quickly in terms of the various initiatives that we have, firstly, we run a very successful HR committee, which brings together HR directors and managers from our membership on a common platform to discuss and exchange on topics like employee wellness, labor laws, employee retention, attrition, and so on. But, gender diversity and inclusion is really a key priority for a number of organizations and French companies in India as well. In fact, in France, like many other European countries, they have an international strategy for gender equality. And this is really a tool to help women, across the world and their situation. In fact, in 2018, the Gender Equality Index was set up, which was really set up to help companies to measure professional inequalities between men and women. And this takes into account several criteria, such as unequal pay wage or the level of increments provided to women when they return from maternity leave. And there's actually a penalty for companies that don't really enforce these policies. In India, as we've discussed, the participation of women at the workplace is extremely low. And I think that, of course, for us, as a chamber, we're seeing much going on the ground now in terms of how this situation can be changed and how women can not only be encouraged to enter the workforce, but also encouraged to remain in the workforce. Because I think in the beginning, during the opening remarks, it was mentioned that, having more women in the workforce does not only mean better earnings and better quality of life, but also a stronger economy. So maybe I could just quickly tell you about some of the policies that we've been seeing that have been put into place within companies. I think one of the first ones is, for example, things like setting up a creche facility. This is gender neutral, promoting pay equity, setting up specific programs for the reintegration of women who come back after a long career break, mentorship programs, but even gender equality in hiring. I think now a lot of HR managers have a mandate that when they're evaluating CVs for a given position, it's always important to have a certain percentage of women candidates for that position. Flexi hours is something which has always been put into place, but I think now with the newer working models in a post-COVID context, there is much more flexibility, and that definitely does work in the favor of working women. So yeah, I'll end there, but I just wanted to share that from my perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Payal. Very interesting. But let me ask you immediately a question that raised to my mind. Do you think that the recent development in the labor market, I'm talking about the pandemic and the COVID that brought us to a much more extensive remote work, would that facilitate the entrance of women in the labor market or not?
Well, it really depends, because I think COVID was actually quite terrible for women at work, because with the extensive lockdowns that we've been through, we had at a given moment of time, women were working in a closed space at home with their children because schools were closed for 2 years as well. There was no access to house help. So I think these 2 years have been extremely difficult for women. But I would say moving forward, since we're now trying to really evaluate this with a positive mindset and look at how now the post-COVID context is working, I think that organizations have realized that we will never go back to the previous way of working. We're really going to be working in this flexible manner in the long run. In fact, we know so many companies that have shut down their offices. They've invested either in co-working spaces or they've got, more linear models for working. And I think this is really what's going to help women feel safe and feel that they are in an environment which encourages women to not only pursue their careers, but also be able to manage their lives at home and their lives as mothers or whatever their responsibilities may be. So I think moving forward, there are a number of policies now which do act in their favor.
Thank you very much, Payal. Now let's turn to Lucia Padanina. She's the Chief Economy and Commercial Counselor of Spain at the Embassy of Spain in New Delhi. And Lucia, it would be nice if you could elaborate a little bit of the impact of women in international trade and how that modified the relationship between companies in the international arena. Lucia.
Yes, thank you very much, Arnaldo, and thank you very much to Ada, to EBTC, and to Wiki for this opportunity. So, from a trade perspective, what I believe is that trade can have a positive effect on supporting gender equality. It has the potential to expand the women's role in the economy. It helps them get better jobs, better access to skills, better access to education. So when countries trade, when trade increases, women can benefit from that. But also from the other side, when women are more integrated into the economy and into international trade, countries can become more competitive, and they are also going to win from that enhanced integration. However, even if these benefits are there, women are not usually able to fully grasp them. We have seen, and it has been said by many of the speakers today, that there is a gender gap in international trade. Just to give an example, a close example to me, among the 230 companies, Spanish companies that are present here in India, we can find valuable and we can find inspirational women, but not as many as we would like to see, not yet in a big number. And the barriers that could be acting here are different between different countries and different regions. Some of them can be common. For example, there is lower participation of women in sectors, export-oriented sectors, and they are overrepresented in sectors that normally face higher trade barriers. There could also be some barriers coming from more difficult access to finance, or also from the need of mobility that trade-related activities usually demand, and that women cannot always provide. I think that there are some trends in international trade that could help change a little bit this and could help generate business opportunities for women, such as the expansion and the growth of trade in services, also the bigger presence of global value chain, and the expansion of the digital economy that would require a lower degree on mobility. And of course, to fully grasp all the benefits that trade can bring to women, a lot of policy making could be developed in these areas. I'm not going to expand on this right now, but in Spain, we're doing several activities, several initiatives to be able to boost the participation of women in trade.
Thank you very much, Lucia. Just one point that I want to raise on what you have said. I have a figure here that is coming out from a study made by the European Commission in Brussels, that the participation of women enterprises in the global value chain is underscored respect to the men business led. by 9% versus 13%. Does that apply also in Spain? I mean, in international trade originated by Spain towards India, towards the rest of the world, or do you have different figures?
Yes, I don't have the exact figures right now, but the working group in the Ministry of Trade, in the Spanish Ministry of Trade, Women and Internationalization, has assessed that there is a lower participation by women in export-led activities. Also, regarding what you just said, I think another important point would be that we need more data, more statistics to be able to better measure and understand how women are participating in trade, and also how trade can impact women. So that's also another key aspect. We need to improve our data, we need to improve our statistics, and that's one of the current action courses that the Ministry of Trade in Spain is currently following.
Lucia, and trying to figure out what has happened to your camera, because you have disappeared from the screen, at least from my screen. I don't know if the others can see you, but there is a black picture instead of you. Okay, Yuka, I'm sure that you. Okay, Yuka, I'm sure that you have some comments on this, on what we have heard.
Yeah, well, I would like to follow up on both Payal and Lucia. I think that you covered quite nicely on the somehow like the change, or the like what is happening now like with COVID, and like I would like to give an example. So like one major company, international company operating in both Finland and India, they have made a global decision that from now on, all the staff, they come to the office only like 2 days a week. So there is that sort of like a permanent change. And now, like if you think of that change, it is quite complex. It comes to your skin, like what do you do in home, like what's the balance between the office and home life, probably touching the female more than the men. So I'm just like willing to emphasize that, like that the world is really like has changed over the last couple of years. Thank you.
Yeah, you I think you are perfectly right, and indeed, not only in the recent 2 past years, but also with the development of the service economy, so based much less in manufacturing, but much more on services, that has started to be a process that would have included female in a much higher rate than in traditional manufacturing. And that is my question now that I want to ask to the three of you, I mean, who want to answer. We are told normally that digitalization is one aspect which is helping a lot female workforce coming into the business side. Do you see this in practice happening, or do you think that this is just a fairy tale which is a narrative which is made by those that are implementing the digital economy?
Well, I can give it a go if it's okay. I don't know if you can see me now.
No, you're still all black.
Well, I'm sorry, so you will only be able to listen to me. So just a quick reaction to your question. Yeah. I think that the growth in services is currently helping the integration of women, including digital services, in global trade, because there was already a higher participation by women in that sector. So since they had more representation there and the growth in those sectors increases, also the participation of women will increase in international trade. It happens the same with other parts of the digital economy. For example, the participation of women in STEM sectors, more scientific sectors, is reduced, is lower as a percentage. So an increase in trade in these sectors would mean an underrepresentation of women in trade. So I think it's related with the structure of the economy and the participation of women in different sectors, And of course, this depends on the preferences of the individuals, but also if we can see a barrier or significant lower participation in a sector, that must be happening because there is something preventing. So that's what we should focus on studying and on trying to increase the participation of women in these sectors of the economy that right now are having these greater opportunities in international trade. That's my view.
Payal, Yuka, you have a remark on this?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to substantiate with statistics, but I would say that digitization in general has really rapidly changed a lot of things for us, right? In terms of the ways companies operate, in terms of how fast things are moving. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm guessing that it is true because it can only really work in favor of having more women at the workforce because it allows for agility, for flexibility. So I think, yeah, and that's also what we've been seeing also from companies on the ground with the kind of new policies that they're coming out with. And, like I had mentioned earlier, it's much more flexible. It's much easier today. So yeah, I would agree with what you said.
Yes, I will also like say that like yes, I am positive like and like when like Finnish and Indian government like we have this digital partnership, so it is like wide change the digital like it's pretty much everywhere. And I would just like to give an example. So like Kenya, where I used to work earlier, they had already in 2007 they had this M-Pesa, so basically mobile payment. That has really like changed the economy, and I see that like all the digital possibilities which are there. So like there is really like scope for different sort of issues, and it's not only like kind of like, so you can take for example the technical fields in which like which are like male dominated, but while it's touching the whole society, I think that there is plenty of possibilities. Thank you.
Certainly, there is still a difference between the corporate sector and the political sector. At least what we are witnessing in Europe right now. I do understand that this is not the case all over the world, but let me share a screen with you. Can you see this screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Now, this is what we have in Europe right now. So the political institutions in Europe are led, guided, and chaired by 3 women. On the left side, you see the President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola. At the center, Ursula von der Leyen is the President of the European Commission. And on the right side, Christine Lagarde is the Chair and President of the European Central Bank. Now, while this is extremely rare, I would say, around the rest of the world to witness, such a 3 powerful women heading the 3 most powerful organizations at European level, I do think that on the corporate side, we still have some path to go for to arrive to head, the big Fortune 500 companies led at least on an equal level by women and men. I think that is something that we are very proud of at European level, but not necessarily is replicated at the corporate level. Now, I think that we are at the end of our session. Unfortunately, as you have seen, we do not have the privilege to have with us Varda Taneja, is the Senior Assistant Vice President at Invest India for different engagement that she couldn't participate at this session. But I think that we made our job. We were able, and you were able to present practices on how the gender equality is put in reality all over the world, and specifically in the EU-India business corridor. So I thank you, all of you, very much for having participated, and I give back the floor to Ada for the conclusion. Ada.
Thank you so much, Arnaldo, and thank you all for participating today and sharing your knowledge, your experience with us. Next time, we definitely need to make sessions longer when we have such a good speakers present, and also such a great companies and organizations, institutions that co-organized this event today. Thank you again, and I'm happy that the last moderated session ended up on a positive note. It's good sign, and thank you very much for being here, and I hope we can together make it happen, make sustainable future through gender equality. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you
very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ada.